So are your cucumber plants giving you grief? Lots of tiny nubs instead of actual cucumbers, or maybe blossoms just dropping off.
Yeah, that's super frustrating for gardeners.
Well, this time, our source material has kind of a wild suggestion for fixing that. Plain old starch.
Starch, like cornstarch or potato starch, the stuff you thicken gravy with.
Exactly. Apparently, it might just be the secret weapon for what the source calls a cucumber bonanza.
Okay, a starch-powered cucumber bonanza. It sounds almost like folklore, doesn't it?
It does. But the source lays out a really specific three-step method. We should probably walk through that first.
Good idea. Let's break it down. What's step one?
Okay, step one. When you're planting, doesn't matter if it's seeds or, little seedling plants, you put just 1 teaspoon of starch, potato, or corn right into the planting hole.
1 teaspoon. Okay, seems easy enough. Just right there where the roots are going to grow.
Yep. Then step two is even simpler.
Yeah.
Just cover that starch up with soil.
Hiding the evidence. Sort of. The source actually says it helps stop birds or like little critters from digging it up.
Oh, okay, that makes practical sense. You want it for your cucumbers, not the local wildlife.
Exactly. And then the final step, step 3. About 3 weeks after you planted, you sprinkle 2 tablespoons of starch per square meter over your cucumber patch.
2 tablespoons per square meter, and then what? Just leave it there.
No, you're going to water it in thoroughly so it gets down into the soil.
Right, okay. So a little boost at planting, then a broader feed a few weeks later. And what are the promised results? The source mentions something about 20 days.
Yeah, after about 20 days, they claim you could see like 2 to 3 times more blossoms.
Seriously? 2 to 3 times?
That's what it says.
Yeah.
And cucumbers that are dense, solid, no hollow bits inside, plus really active vine growth, even if the summer's a bit cool.
Wow. Okay, those are some pretty big claims for something as simple as starch. More flowers, better quality fruit, vigorous plants. Which really gets to the core of this deep dive, doesn't it? Can simple kitchen starch really make that much of a difference for your cucumber harvest?
That's the million-dollar question. Let's get into the why. What's the science or the theory behind how starch is supposed to work here?
Okay, so the source explains starch is a slow carbohydrate, and it apparently has 3 main benefits for the cucumbers. First off, it feeds the soil bacteria.
Interesting. So it's not feeding the plant directly, it's feeding the microbes in the soil.
Exactly. The idea is you feed these good bacteria, they get happy, they multiply, and they produce more humus.
Ah, humus. Okay, that makes sense. Humus is that dark, rich organic matter that's like amazing for soil structure and nutrient availability.
Right. So better soil means the roots can take up nutrients more easily. It's an indirect effect, feeding the soil life to feed the plant.
Got it. Okay, what's the second benefit?
The second one is that it supposedly helps plants deal with stress from temperature changes, like if you get sudden hot spells or cool nights.
And how does that connect to the cucumbers?
Well, the source suggests this reduced stress is why fewer blossoms drop off. You know how frustrating blossom drop is.
Oh, definitely. You see all those potential cucumbers just fall off. So starch helps prevent that by making the plant more resilient to temperature swings.
Apparently so. And the third benefit they mentioned is about the fruit itself. It's supposed to increase the sugar content in the cucumbers.
Making them taste better.
Yeah, leading to those really juicy, crisp cucumbers everyone wants, not watery or bland.
Okay, so feeds soil life, reduces stress and blossom drop, and improves fruit quality. That's quite a list. Did the source mention any actual studies or research?
It did, yeah. It referenced some experiments from the Timiryazev Academy. Apparently, they found using starch-boosted cucumber yields by somewhere between 25 and 40%.
25 to 40%. That's a pretty significant increase.
It really is. Now, it'd be great to see the full details of those experiments, of course, but it does lend some credibility, doesn't it?
It certainly makes it sound less like pure folklore. Okay, so beyond those basics, were there any other little tips or tricks mentioned?
Oh, yeah. There's this life hack from someone called Fyodor Ivanovich. He suggests mixing the starch with a teaspoon of cinnamon before you use it.
Cinnamon? Why cinnamon?
2 reasons, apparently. One, it's supposed to help protect against fungal diseases in the soil.
Okay, that makes sense. Cinnamon does have antifungal properties. What's the other reason?
This is the weird part. It's supposed to give the cucumbers a subtle gingerbread aroma.
Yes, bread. Cucumbers. Are you serious?
That's what the source says. I mean, I can't imagine it, but maybe. Sounds like one of those old-timey garden secrets.
It really does. Unique, anyway. Any other tips?
Just one more practical one. If your cucumber vines get really sick and leafy, they suggest training them to grow diagonally.
Diagonally, why is that?
So that sunlight can actually get down to all the developing cucumbers lower down on the vine, stops them from being pale and underdeveloped because they're stuck in the shade.
Ah, good point. Maximizing sun exposure for all the fruit. Makes sense. Okay, now wasn't there also a story in there, something about a mistake?
Oh, yes. The cautionary tale of Babushka Glodder. You'll love this. It seems dear Glara got her measurements a bit mixed up.
Uh-oh, what did she do?
Instead of teaspoons of starch in the planting hole, she used tablespoons, like half a cup per plant.
Half a CUP. Whoa, that's way, way more than the teaspoon recommended. What happened?
Well, picture this. Her cucumbers apparently grew to the size of zucchini.
Huge.
Zucchini-sized cucumbers.
Oh.
Okay. But how did they taste?
Like boiled potatoes. No, seriously.
Seriously. The source says her neighbors were joking about making French fries from them. Definitely not the crisp, juicy ideal.
Oh, dear. Poor Glara. But I guess it proves a point about moderation.
Exactly. And apparently her response was just, well, at least all the blossoms stayed on. And then she gave away her giant starchy cucumbers.
Bless her heart. A funny lesson that more isn't always better, even with something potentially good like starch.
Right. Now, after that little anecdote, the forest takes a sharp turn into, well, let's just say things get a bit weird.
Weirder than gingerbread cucumber.
Oh, yeah. It introduces something called the cucumber alchemist ritual, described as 50% truth, 50% magic.
Okay, I'm intrigued. A magic ritual involving starch?
Pretty much. It involves facing east with your back to the empty garden bed you're about to plant. You need potato starch specifically, fertile soil, and a galvanized watering can.
Galvanized? Does it have to be galvanized?
Apparently. And then there's an incantation you have to say.
Of course there is. What do you say?
Something like, just as starch thickens kissel, which is like a fruit soup, so cucumbers grow dense and crisp. Not bothered by heat or rain, grow fat and strong. Amen.
Wow. Okay, that's quite something. Is that it?
Almost. After the amen, you have to spit 3 times over your left shoulder and whisper, grow, or you'll go into brine. Threatening your cucumbers with pickling if they don't perform. That's intense, isn't it?
Hmm.
And the recommended attire is naturally an apron with cucumber prints on it.
Yeah.
Plus, the warning again, don't overdo the starch or the magic won't work.
It feels like a very tongue-in-cheek way to reinforce the instructions, maybe drawing on some old folk traditions where you did have little rituals for good luck.
Maybe. But then it pivots again into what sounds suspiciously like a conspiracy theory.
Oh, about starch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The theory presented is that the big fertilizer companies know how effective cheap starch is. So they're supposedly freaking out.
Freaking out. Why?
Because if everyone uses cheap starch, nobody will buy their expensive fertilizers. So the theory goes, they're paying stores to hide the starch or not stock it.
Okay. A bit far-fetched, maybe.
And they're supposedly adding growth blockers to their own fertilizer products to make sure gardeners stay dependent on them.
Growth blockers. Wow, okay. That's definitely entering conspiracy territory. Is there any evidence offered for this?
The evidence is supposedly those labels you sometimes see on starch packaging that say, not for agricultural use. The source presents this as proof the companies are trying to warn off gardeners.
Right. Or, it could just be a standard labeling thing for food-grade products not specifically tested or intended for large-scale agriculture. But it's an entertaining theory.
It certainly adds some spice.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the source does bring us back down to earth a bit by including what actual agronomists, agricultural scientists say about starch.
Okay, the voice of reason. What's their take?
Well, they do confirm that starch can improve soil structure, which totally lines up with the earlier idea about feeding microbes and creating humus.
So there is scientific agreement on that basic mechanism. That's good.
Yes. But crucially, they add some important warnings.
Like what? We already heard about Glatchra's potato cucumbers.
Right. They warn that using too much starch can actually encourage the growth of bad fungi pathogenic ones.
Ah, okay. So it can feed the wrong crowd if you overdo it. Makes sense. What do they suggest if that happens?
Their advice is to treat the soil with phytosporin, which is like a biofungicide. Uses good microbes to fight the bad ones.
Good to know. Any other caveats from the scientists?
Yeah, they really emphasize that starch works best when it's used alongside other organic matter, like compost or manure or even fermented weed tea.
So it's not a magic bullet on its own. It's a potential helper, but you still need good overall soil health practices.
Exactly. It's part of a system, not a replacement for good gardening.
That sounds much more balanced and realistic. So, pulling it all together, the source gives other tips for cucumber success too, right? Not just starch.
Right. They remind people to choose self-pollinating varieties, mentioning Herman F1 and Misha F1 specifically. These don't need bees, which can be handy.
Yeah, it takes pollination worries out of the equation. Good tip. What else?
Crop rotation. Don't plant cucumbers where you just had pumpkins or squash or other melons. They're heavy feeders and deplete the same nutrients.
Standard good practice. Avoids nutrient drain and disease buildup. Makes sense.
And the last one was about watering. Only use warm water.
Warm water. Why?
Apparently, cold water can shock the plant and might actually cause those hollow spots inside the cucumbers.
Interesting. So using cold water could potentially counteract the very benefit the starch is supposed to provide regarding density.
Exactly. It all works together. Soil health, variety choice, rotation, watering technique. Starch might be one piece, but not the whole puzzle.
It really seems that way. Now, the source also tried to get the audience involved, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It asks readers to comment, "I believe in starch," or "It's a myth." Kind of a fun little poll.
And there was a reward for joining in, right?
Yes, a recipe for cucumber lemonade that will make the neighbor envious.
Off now, love it.
Yeah.
Using those potentially starch-boosted cucumbers for some bragging rights lemonade.
Sounds pretty refreshing, actually.
Yeah.
And then there's one final funny note at the very end.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
A little P.S. suggesting your starch-fed cucumbers might be so incredibly crunchy that the neighbors could complain about the noise.
Complaining about cucumber crunching.
Yeah. It says, don't worry, it's not a noise violation, just proof of your gardening success and your passionate gardening spirit. They call it Icha.
Laughing. That's brilliant. The ultimate sign of success. Noise complaints about your crunchy vegetables.
So, after all that, where do we land? Is starch the secret key to unlocking a massive cucumber harvest?
Well, it's definitely an intriguing idea. The source lays out a simple method and promises some pretty impressive results.
And we've heard the potential science behind it, feeding the soil microbes, reducing stress.
But we've also seen the other side, the cautionary tale of Glyra using way too much.
The slightly wacky ritual and the conspiracy theory.
And, importantly, the balanced view from the agronomists. It can help soil structure, but use it moderately and combine it with good organic practices. It's not a magic wand.
Right. So while that cucumber conveyor belt powered by starch sounds amazing, it seems like success really comes down to a whole range of factors.
It really does. This whole exploration is a great reminder, isn't it? Sometimes simple, unexpected things can potentially help in the garden, but they usually work best as part of a bigger picture, alongside those tried and true methods like building healthy soil and choosing the right plants.
Maybe the takeaway for you listening is to think about that balance. Are there simple, maybe unconventional things you could try alongside the basics? Perhaps even, doing a little starch experiment on a few plants yourself, just to see what happens.
Yeah, a small-scale trial could be really interesting. See if you notice a difference in your own garden.